What's up guys, Andre here, and I'm joined by Ash Paulson to answer your questions about the Nintendo Switch and its games, accessories, everything we can talk about, we will. So there are a lot of questions here, so many in fact, like well over 100. I mean, we got even more than that, but we had to narrow it down. I think we're going to split this up into two parts. I think we're going to start off with 50 questions today, and then 50 plus more tomorrow. We'll see how this works out. But this should be fun. You ready, Ash, to go through and answer as many questions as we can?
I'm ready, and it should be noted that we didn't obviously know the answers to everything. We had to cut a few questions, and there were a few of you who asked similar questions, so you won't necessarily hear your name up here if you ask the same question as somebody else, but rest assured we did look at everything.
Right, so it really is, we really should drive home the point that we don't know every answer. There are some we're going to talk about here that we're not 100% on. So yeah, this is not a definitive guide to the Switch, but we're going to try and make it as complete as we can based on our experience with it. And with that, let's go and hop in here. So our first question comes to us from @Rijiki, and I apologize ahead of time if I screw up any of these names, but I'm going to butcher a bunch of them. But he asks, how is the touchscreen?
Well, right off the bat, we're trying to answer one that we don't really know the full answer to, which is, it's probably great, but there weren't really any games that used the touchscreen elements of the Switch's screen there. So, there was no Switch UI, no interface. So, it is a capacitive touchscreen. It's multi-touch, stylus-free, like the iPhone, like, most touchscreens these days. But specifically, we didn't really get to try the touchscreen element of the Switch's screen there.
Right. I will say I actually did touch it as if it were a touchscreen, so I don't know.
Me too.
Yeah, right. I feel like we had to. So I can't speak as to how responsive it is, but based on the fact that it feels literally like any other phone screen out there, I'm pretty sure it's going to be fine.
Yeah, I have no concerns regarding the touchscreen.
Alright. Next up, this comes to us from @Swack999, and he asks, were you able to get any glimpses of the new UI? Also, how was the frame rate on all the games you played? So I guess we just kind of answered that, Ash. Or
yeah, really, like, a few of you actually asked about the menu system and the UI and the eShop and things like that, and just to be very clear, they weren't showing us any of that at the event. We didn't get to see the UI at all. Even when you press the home button while you're playing a game, which I did just to be cheeky and see if I could get a glimpse of something. Nothing. The home button was completely unresponsive, so really they were keeping the UI under wraps.
Mm-hmm. How about the frame rate in all the games?
I mean, in general, I can't think of any, really other than Zelda, which we've touched on, I don't think it's any big secret that there are some frame rate problems in the Switch version of Zelda, which I seem to notice mostly when you're in areas with lots of blades of grass. Like when you're in a really grassy area and all those individual blades of grass are being rendered, there are definitely some frame rate problems. So, other than that, though, I don't really recall. I mean, Mario Kart 8 was super smooth, Splatoon 2, ARMS, I think really it was just Zelda that has some frame rate problems, and really only in areas where there was rendering lots of grass.
Yeah, on the whole, I felt like everything ran, or not everything, but most things ran very smooth for the most point, or most part. Zelda is one of the key exceptions. I think there were a couple third-party games that might have ran at sub 30, or around 30 rather.
Yeah, I did note earlier in our discussion that Super Bomberman R, it runs at a steady 30 frames, but given how low res and kind of janky the graphics are in that game already, I feel like that's kind of unacceptable. I mean, it doesn't... 30 frames is fine for most games, but that game looks like a budget title already, so I personally feel that it should be running in 60 and that it could easily do that.
Right.
But, it just isn't for whatever reason, and I don't know if I'd call it a frame rate problem, but I just feel like it could have been optimized more.
All right. Next up, this comes to us from @RossC304, and he asks, what game are you most hyped about for the Switch? Ash?
So I guess if you're asking in terms of the games they showed off there, I would have to be... of the games we played, of course it's got to be Breath of the Wild. Yeah. But that's also, I feel like that's also a Wii U game, and I feel like Zelda's kind of its own thing. So I guess beyond that, out of everything we played, I guess it would have to be Splatoon 2, which is surprising because I like Splatoon, but I'm not like a hardcore Splatoon fan like I am Smash. But I had a lot of fun. I was really surprised by how elegantly Splatoon's controls kind of carried over to the Switch Pro controller into the Switch tablet, the Switch console itself. So I really had a good time playing Splatoon 2 with the Switch Pro controller.
Yeah, I think I agree with all that. I would also say ARMS is pretty great too. So I'm excited for ARMS just because it's so different from what we've seen before.
Right.
Alright, @Kerbagon asks, are we able to play on the go but use a Pro controller?
I don't see any reason why not. Well, we didn't specifically confirm this, but I don't think it really makes a difference to the system itself.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the Switch doesn't know whether you're in a plane or you're at home or whatever. So if you want to do that, I can't imagine any reason why you wouldn't be able to use the Switch Pro controller with the Switch tablet itself on the go. But we don't know that for sure.
At Inu Kazani asks, will the Switch have any differences in memory? Will it be 32 gigabytes or more?
So there is only one SKU, or only one configuration, that is 32 gigabytes, and if you want to expand that yourself by buying an SD card, like a higher capacity SD card, you can. But in terms of what Nintendo is selling at launch, it is the one configuration, and that is 32 gigabytes.
All right. At Snivy Gohan asks, what does the home screen look like? Is it like a PS4 now, or does it still look like the Wii U home screen? So I'm going to modify that question a bit because, again, we didn't see it ourselves in person, but Nintendo did show it off during the Treehouse. So I guess we can just give our quick impressions of it. Ash, what do you think on what we've seen, of the little we've seen of the home screen so far? What do you think of it?
It actually did give me a PS4 vibe because it looks like, at least from what they've shown, like your collection of games, they're displayed as like, thumbnails of art related to that game, and you're just scrolling through cool art of all the games you have, and it's very similar to PS4. Like, they're square-shaped thumbnails showcasing the game's logo and some key art. So it very actually did remind me of the PS4's interface, and from what little we've seen, I like it.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what to think of it yet. It's definitely a little bit sparse.
Sure.
There's not a lot going on there. It's simple. Probably should work fine. I'm sure it works fine with touch. I'm assuming it has. I'm assuming it will use a touch screen.
It must.
Yeah.
There's no way it wouldn't.
It did remind me a little bit, maybe not necessarily the PS4, but of the 3DS when you're zoomed in, like on almost all the way on the menu screen, which I don't know if anyone really does, but it was a little bit like that. So,
it did remind me of that, as basically you're scrolling through like these square-shaped thumbnails of the content you have.
All right, at Temple of Games asks, based on the many positive and mixed reactions to the Switch, how do you think the Switch will do on the marketplace?
I mean, this is such a large question. This could be a whole discussion in itself.
Yep,
I mean,
and it probably will be.
Basically, I really do think that the launch lineup isn't that great, and I do think that E3 this year is really going to be make or break. If Nintendo comes out all guns blazing at E3 with all these incredible Switch announcements and really makes the first year seem like it's going to be great, then I think the Switch has a real shot at doing really well and impressing people. But if E3 comes and goes and the first year is looking a little iffy, I don't know. I don't know how the Switch does if the first year isn't really strong. So that's kind of how I'm feeling right now.
But do you think it could do really well or really well? That's a key distinction.
Well, I know Nintendo wants it to do really well, so that's what they would like. But I don't know. I think again, if Nintendo can come correct with the content, I do think that the central gimmick of being able to play this console on the go is really appealing. Yeah. Because I've said this before. My gee whiz moment when I was playing the Switch came when I was playing Mario Kart 8 on tabletop mode. And sitting on that mock plane, I'm like, wait, I'm playing this game that looks gorgeous. It's a gorgeous current generation game on a portable, and that's really cool.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. I mean, I think it has potential to do well, but it's too early to say. So I don't want to. I kind of don't want to say because I really don't know.
Exactly.
It's really impossible to say at this point. But I think we'll have a better idea as we approach launch, as we hopefully learn even more about the system, its games, and wherever else is coming. All right. At @176 asks, do you think that buying Mario Kart 8 Deluxe when you already own Mario Kart 8 is a good idea? Ash?
First of all, /, I just want to say I love your name. I assume that's a Shulk reference. / I hope I'm right. Anyway, that is the question I'm trying to answer for myself.
Right?
And let me be very clear. I love Mario Kart 8. I think it's probably my second favorite Mario Kart in the entire series. I love that game. I put in hundreds of hours into it on the Wii U. But that might be the problem, because we just found out today, Nintendo confirmed that there are no new regular racetracks coming to Deluxe. Literally, it's going to be the 3 new characters, Battle Mode, and the tracks that come with Battle Mode. The 1080p instead of, what was it, 720p on Wii U. So, there's a nice suite of upgrades, but for a full $60, I'm having a really hard time justifying that, and I actually don't know if I'm going to be getting Deluxe when it comes out, just because I have this game, and I have 90% of the content that Deluxe comes with already, and for a full $60, I feel like they should have had an upgrade program in place somehow, at least for people who bought Mario Kart 8 digitally. I understand they can't track physical copies, but digitally, I feel like they should have had something ready to go. I don't know. $60 seems like a bit much.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, I totally agree with all of that. It does seem like a bit much just for some new characters, tracks, or sorry, battle mode, and no tracks, evidently, and the dual item mechanic now, which is just like every past Mario Kart game.
Right.
Yeah, it's $60 is a lot for that. I mean, I like battle mode. I don't know if I like it that much. So
that's the thing. I mean, and I want to be clear. Like, I really enjoyed battle mode. I had a lot of fun with it. And if that's really important to you, if you like have a group of friends and like the one thing you guys like to do is battle mode, then that alone might make it worth it for you. Mm-hmm. But if you don't see yourself playing battle mode a lot, then I really have to wonder why you'd buy it for $60.
Yeah,
because it really, outside of battle mode, there's not really much new content.
Yep, pretty much. I don't know if there's a name for this next question, unless it came from the same person.
Oh, no, I guess, yeah, it's weird. The name's not here.
Alright, well, sorry, we lost your name, but they ask, do the games drastically lower in quality when it's not docked, or is it just minimal differences?
I mean, this might be a game-to-game thing, but generally, I mean, there's not really a drop in quality at all. I mean, the Switch's screen is 720p, and then when it's docked, it's outputting at 1080p. So clearly, you're always going to get a higher resolution image on the TV than you will the Switch. However, what we've heard about Zelda, at least, and we can't really back this up ourselves, but we've heard that some people think Zelda actually runs better on the Switch console because it's outputting at 720p on the screen. Therefore, it doesn't have as much to render.
As opposed
there's
to on
actually
the TV,
less,
you're saying.
Right, yeah. As opposed to on the TV, where there's more to render at 1080p, so we see a little more slowdown on the TV. Now, again, this isn't something we can confirm ourselves, but it does make a little sense. But I would not say that nothing I saw suggests that the game's drastically lower in quality. I don't think they even lower in quality at all. I thought every game I played on the Switch's screen itself looked fantastic.
Yeah, I think the resolution's the main, perhaps only thing, because, yeah, we can't verify those reports. I believe Aonuma said that they should run the exact same, at least in terms of the experience, outside resolution for Zelda. So I don't know where the truth is in this one. I mean, once we get it in, of course, hopefully, if we do, we'll definitely be, checking that out. But until then, I can't say for sure. All right. I mean, at the least, it wasn't enough that we noticed if there is a difference.
No, and I mean, even if the games are downscaling to 720p on the Switch's screen, you have to remember the Switch's screen is super tiny compared to most TVs you're going to be playing on. So, the downgrade, and I say that loosely, the quote-unquote downgrade in resolution doesn't mean much because you're seeing it on this much denser, more, pixel compact screen.
All right. At Hesdantric, I think, asks, what are your thoughts on the gray versus the colored versions? Which one will you guys get? And I'll go start this one off real quick. Just because when I first saw the colored version, the neon colored one, I forget the official name for it, I wasn't quite sold on it. Like, it looked weird to me, especially since we've only seen the gray one so far. I have to admit, it's growing on me. I kind of want that one now.
It is. It's grown on. It did grow on me as I saw the red and the blue Joy-Cons in person. It did grow on me. However, I still am a big fan of symmetry, and I wish they had versions where you could they're both red or they're both blue. And I'm obviously not interested in spending $50 on a new Joy-Con just to have the matching color.
Yeah.
So I do like them, and they look great in person. I don't know if I really like the red and blue together. I just kind of wish they had different configurations. But in person, they both look great. Like, I like the red and I like the blue.
I really want that mock-up the guy did at the Game Explain version with, like, the dark blue.
I still want that dark blue. Yeah, that dark blue, like, matte finish was beautiful in that mock-up.
Yeah. The weird thing is, like, although I like the neon Joy-Cons, I don't know if I'd want two of either of those colors. I'd want two of a different shade of those colors,
Yeah, it's like they're as good as they look in person, they're both a little bright for me. I kind of wish they were slightly darker, because they don't really... Like, the Switch in general is very un-Nintendo-like in that it's sleek and it looks like a modern piece of technology. It doesn't look like a toy. But then when you add these bright red and bright blue Joy-Cons on there, it looks a lot more like a toy, even though the form factor still suggests that it isn't a toy. So it's kind of weird. I kind of wish they were darker colors. Darker red, darker blue,
I agree. All right, At Urbor Longan asks, how do the D-pad ABXY buttons feel like when you press it? Is it soft like the Wii U gamepad or hard like the 3DS XL buttons?
Okay, so a few of you asked this, and I wish I had paid more attention while I was holding it, because I was paying more attention to how the controller feels overall and the different functionalities of the controller, and not so much the buttons themselves.
Like, well, I'll insert here real quick then. I think if going by memory, I think it feels more like a 3DS XL button type than the Wii U gamepad.
Okay, see, I was gonna say they felt softer, so I don't know where the truth lies.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah, now there are the shoulder buttons are all pretty. They're hard, like they're digital and not analog. So those like kind of have a clickiness to them. But I don't recall if the face buttons had that similar clickiness. I feel like the Switch Pro controller at least felt almost identical to the Wii U Pro controller in terms of the buttons and the way the buttons depress. But in terms of the Joy-Cons, I'm really trying to remember. To me, I feel like they're kind of soft and mushy, but that might not be accurate. I just don't remember it.
Yeah, I don't remember either. It could be that I'm remembering it like the 3DS more based on their size, which I think there's the buttons. I think the size of those buttons are almost exactly like the 3DS XL.
Right. Okay.
Like they're smaller than the gamepads.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Yeah. They're definitely, I would say the buttons in general feel smaller than on the gamepad. So do the sticks. The analog sticks are also smaller.
All right. At Anime Gaming Nerd asks, how was the size of the Switch compared to the new 3DS XL, Wii U gamepad, or Vita? And do you prefer the Pro Controller or Joy-Cons?
Okay, so there are a lot of actually direct comparisons out there that you can see where people have actually taken pictures of the three, different hardware right next to each other. As I'm envisioning it and trying to think about holding it, it feels smaller than the Wii U gamepad, but at the same time, I think it's also I guess it's thinner. It's much thinner than the Wii U gamepad for sure, and I feel like it's smaller in general, but it's also heavier because there's a lot more going on inside the Switch because it's the entire console. It's not just the controller, so it's definitely heavier than the Wii U gamepad, but it's also thinner and sleeker. For what that's worth.
Yeah, you pretty much hit on it. I think weren't you surprised by how heavy it felt at one point?
Well, I was, but it was hard to get an accurate reading on that because remember, every Switch we got to play, it was clamped down with these like anti-theft devices, right, which in they're big chunks of metal. So what we were holding was not indicative of how heavy the Switch actually is. But I still think the Switch is certainly heavier than the Wii U gamepad.
Oh yeah, I don't think that's really a question.
Yeah, there's no way it couldn't be.
Yeah, I mean, if it somehow isn't, it might be because the gamepad is physically larger, so you don't feel the weight as much, perhaps.
Right.
Or it's not. Yeah, I don't know. It might be a psychological thing, but I'm pretty confident the gamepad, the Switch is much heavier than the gamepad. But I mean, not uncomfortably so. Like I wasn't getting tired holding it or anything.
Right. No, I didn't get tired holding it at all. And then as for the question of whether I prefer the Pro Controller or the Joy-Cons, it's really, that's going to be on a game-to-game or game-by-game basis, just like Wii U. Like, even now, there are certain games on Wii U where I like having the gamepads, like Wind Waker HD, stuff like that. But then there are other games like Mario Kart 8 or Shovel Knight where I prefer the Pro Controller. So I think that's really going to be similar on the Switch. It's really going to be down to a game-by-game basis which controller you prefer. But I can tell you, I think I prefer playing Splatoon 2 with Pro Controller, for example. Like, that I would want to play with the Pro Controller. However, I was surprised to find out that Zelda I really enjoyed with the Joy-Con grip. Like, at launch, I don't know if I even need to rush out and buy a Pro Controller because I really liked how Zelda controlled with a Joy-Con grip. So it is going to be a game-by-game basis, I think.
I will say, maybe I'm just fine at adapting to new control schemes. Like, I was talking on Twitter earlier how I love playing Mario Kart Wii with the Wii wheel, and a lot of people did it. But I didn't have too much trouble with most of the control configurations we tried. But there was one thing I noticed, and I touched on this in our discussion, and that is when you're playing with a Joy-Con in almost any capacity, the travel distance on those joysticks isn't much. And I could definitely see that affecting how you control, like, aiming, for instance. Like, in Splatoon, if you're using the right stick, I could definitely see it making it trickier to line up shots. Although in that case, you have the motion controls to augment it as well. So it's not, maybe not that big of a deal in that case. But I could see that being a potential problem, whereas on the Pro Controller, you have a typical travel distance for those control sticks, making it much easier to be more accurate with them.
Right, and like I can tell you right now, if you're really into fighting games or 2D platformers, you're basically going to have to buy a Pro Controller, because I'll tell you right now, using the left Joy-Con's face buttons as a makeshift D-pad sucks. Like, I would never play Ultra Street Fighter 2 or like Shovel Knight or Mega Man or something with the Joy-Con L, because you don't have a D-pad. They're 4 separate buttons like on the N64 controller, and that sucks for a D-pad.
Like the C buttons on the N64 controller, you mean?
Oh, is that? Yeah, the C buttons, sorry. The C buttons on the N64 controller. So, yeah, I mean, you're not going to want to control any game that requires a D-pad or is better with a D-pad like that.
Yep, I agree. At Jeff Gordon, one fan asks, "How are the Joy-Cons? Are the Joy-Con? I don't know what I was going for there. Are the Joy-Cons comfy for big hands?"
Yes, absolutely, and that's something I really wanted to draw attention to. At least for me, I have like giant monster hands. My hands are big, And
basically the Incredible Hulk over there.
Yeah, like, no, I have, like, big hands, but I played Mario Kart 8 Deluxe with you, Andre, and I was actually playing with the Joy-Con held horizontally.
By itself, whereas I was using the wheel.
Yeah, by itself, so only the Joy-Con horizontally, and I have to say, it's like 60% of the length of the Wii Remote or something. It's so much shorter, and it doesn't look like it would have any sort of comfort in big hands, but it does. It actually was fine. Like, I didn't feel like I was cramped. I didn't feel like my fingers were in unnatural position. So despite the fact that the Joy-Con is a lot shorter than the Wii Remote, even for big hands, it felt fine for me.
Now, there's one thing to consider here. I largely agree with that. In fact, I totally agree with that. Although my opinion could... keep in mind, these are all early impressions. These could change when we actually play the games and system more in depth. But you had the left Joy-Con, right? And I had the right one, as I recall.
Yes.
And the right one... the joystick is more centered, I believe, as compared to yours, which the joystick is on the left.
Is more in a more traditional location.
So
yeah.
I wonder. I did notice in my case. Again, I was using the wheel though. So that kind of actually made the problem even worse. That pushed the joystick even more toward the center of what I was holding. But I want. In the case of Mario Kart, I think we were using motion control. I mean, I know we were using motion controls. Do you remember if you could use a control stick for steering in that game too?
Yes, I could. Like even with the motion controls on, I was able to, like just hold the controller steady and just use the control stick, which I eventually ended up doing because I'm not a big fan of motion controls in Mario Kart.
Okay, cool. I didn't try that, but I did have to use a control stick in order to aim weapons either forward or back, and I did find reaching in using the wheel again. Was just a little bit uncomfortable in that case.
I can see that.
It didn't quite seem to be perfectly natural, but it also didn't seem to be a huge deal. So we'll see how that ends up, being with the full thing. And again, we're playing 2-player. That's one of the cool things about this is if you have the Switch, you already have 2 controllers built in for both of you. So all right. At Kinshu Maru 1 asks, would Splatoon 2 have some potential of being worth being bought? Okay, that was a little bit rough to read, but...
Right, and then there's another question here by Death by Koopa, who asks, did Splatoon feel any different from the original, and how does the new dodging mechanic work and feel? So, I just, those are kind of related questions. Yeah. Splatoon 2 really, it impressed me. I mean, it's very similar in look and feel to Splatoon 1. You're not looking at a huge graphical upgrade. I don't really even know if you're looking at any graphical upgrade, to be honest, but at the same time, I felt Splatoon 1 was a great looking game, so no complaints there. But I really, like I said before, I think the Splatoon control scheme really ports over elegantly from the Wii U GamePad to like the Switch Pro controller, and I had a lot of fun playing it. In fact, I think I had more fun playing it with a regular controller than I did the GamePad in Splatoon 1. But to be very clear, the two games don't feel different at all. Like, this is absolutely a direct sequel with new content. That said, I love, and I think you agree with me, Andre, I love the new Splat Dualies weapon.
Oh, that was
so
awesome.
Fun to use. Yeah, and that's the weapon that allows you to do the new dodge roll mechanic. And that feels great too. I loved dodge rolling around and using the Splat Dualies. So I really had a lot of fun playing Splatoon 2, especially with the new weapon.
Yep, I don't disagree.
Yeah.
All right, at Grandmaster Gravity asks, do you know how many battle tracks are in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe?
Off the top of my head, no. I don't think Nintendo has officially confirmed that, right, Andre?
No, but I think what, have we seen 4 of them now? Is that?
I think we've seen 4, and I feel like I've heard 8 being thrown around, but I don't know if that's true. But there's at least 4. So, we got Luigi's Mansion, SNES Donut Plains 1, the new Battle Stadium track, and then there is another one too that we know about.
Luigi's Mansion? Did you say that?
I mentioned that one.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And you mentioned Splatoon.
Oh, no, Splatoon. And yeah, so there's Urchin Underpass. Yeah, so that's 4 that we know of for sure. And there might be more, but we don't know yet as far as I know off the top of my head.
All right, perfect. Well, not perfect. I wish we knew of more, but yeah, we'll roll on. At TJ Kingdom asks, how is the volume on the Switch when it isn't docked?
Straight up, we don't know because we were at a loud demo event and it's just impossible. But it's a great question because I know the Wii U GamePad and the 3DS, actually, all models of the 3DS have some issues with the volume not being high enough just coming out of the speakers. So I wish I could answer, but yeah, the straight truth is we were at a loud demo event, so there's no way to know.
Right. All right, at KlingNE asks, how is the HD Rumble? And Ad Leafy also asks, kind of related questions. I haven't heard much about the HD Rumble, which is the most interesting feature to me. How is it? Is it really HD? Ash?
So I really love the HD Rumble. To me, I can feel a night and day difference between the Rumble on the Switch and, the quote-unquote standard Rumble on, other prior controllers like the DualShock 4 and the Wii U controllers and all that. So to me, I felt the difference. It really stood out to me in both Splatoon 2 and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, where I felt like in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I was feeling the much finer points of the road, as opposed to just kind of the more standard rumble throughout the regular version of Mario Kart 8. So it's kind of hard to explain unless you're holding the Switch and you feel it yourself. But I guess the way I would describe it is that the rumble feels much more nuanced and finer depending on what's happening.
So there's HD, you mean?
Yeah, but HD. So I mean, really, I guess there's a much wider breadth between a very minor rumble and a very intense rumble with HD rumble than there would be if you just were on a regular standard rumble controller.
Are you comparing it to the Wii U GamePad specifically, or rumble in general? Because I know, like, I think the PS, like the PlayStation systems have, I think they've almost all utilized two rumble motors.
Oh, do they? Okay, so I guess I'm comparing it to the Wii U GamePad indirectly, but also to the DualShock 4. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is, compared to all the rumble I've felt in various controls so far, the Switch felt different. Okay. It felt finer, and it felt more nuanced than even the DualShock 4. So I'm actually a big believer, based on what I played at the event, I'm a big believer in the potential of HD Rumble. But Andre, I think you feel maybe a little differently, right?
I mean, I'm a little bit baffled by what potential you think is there. I mean, I'm one who's pretty indifferent to Rumble in general. Like, I thought it was cool as a novelty at first, then I usually turned it off in games. Like, or maybe not turned off. Like, in some cases I did. Like, it got annoying, like in Halo, if you're using the gunner seat on the Warthog. But you know, like when I go back and use a Wavebird, for instance, I don't miss Rumble at all. Like, I don't think it adds that much to games. The one thing I would grant as an exception would be motion control. I think it actually did a great job on the Wii, enhancing the feel of those games, and they're trying to make it feel like you're actually holding the object you're using in the game, like a baseball bat or something. So in the case of the HD Rumble here, you know, I barely even noticed it. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. No, granted, I do want to stress I didn't try, apparently like the Marble game for 1-2 Switch is perhaps the best use of it from what I've heard, and that's one I didn't get to try. Instead, I tried like milking a cow and whatever else. But, it didn't do much for me, so, but we'll see when it actually comes out, but I don't
Well, this is actually a great comparison, though. Like, it may well be that if you don't care about Rumble in your games in general, then HD Rumble may not change your mind. For me, I actually do value Rumble a lot, and I actually actively missed it when the PS3 first came out, and it was like the 6-axis, and it didn't have Rumble, and I'm like, wow, I didn't know how much I'd miss it, but I really do. So clearly, compared, you know, when you compare Andre and I, Rumble is different levels of importance to us.
Yeah, one of us acknowledges it's a gimmick, and the other doesn't.
Wow, really? You just can't just let things... Next question.
at eShips4502 asks, is there much pop in with Breath of the Wild? So are there things that pop up when you're playing the game?
Not that I noticed. I mean, there's always going to be a little pop in, I think. I think I think I noticed a little pop in, but it wasn't something that was like taking me out of the experience or like something I constantly noticed. That game looks beautiful, and I was constantly impressed by what Breath of the Wild was able to do visually on a system that I am constantly surprised, like with the Wii U. I feel like that game should not look as good as it does on Wii U, but it constantly impressed me. So, you know, I'm not the kind of guy who's going to be really critical of some draw distance issues in any way or pop in. Like, that stuff doesn't take me out of the experience. So, yes, I noticed some, and if that bothers you, it might bother you in Breath of the Wild, but it didn't bother me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's basically it. Like, I didn't even notice it that much. I'm sure it's there, probably in a similar capacity as it was to the Wii U version. But so I couldn't tell you if it's better or worse than the Wii U version. You can watch our head-to-head maybe for a better idea of that. But yeah, it didn't seem to be a big deal. And it wasn't a big deal to me at E3 either with the Wii U one. So
right.
At Mr. That Kid Alex24 asks, are the triggers analog or digital?
Like, I just want to point out, like, 15 of you asked this. I feel like this is one of the questions we saw come up the most. So I want to set the record straight. The triggers are digital. They are one click function. You click it down, you click it up. There's no nuance like you could, like on the GameCube controller, for instance. You don't depress the L button a little bit to get, something different than you would if you press it all the way down. It is on or off, 0 or 1. That is all it is. So.
And you're saying that applies for both the shoulder buttons and the triggers, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So as far as I understand it, and from what I remember, the triggers are all digital, and that goes for the Switch Pro controller. That goes for, I think, the Switch itself as well. Do you remember, Andre?
Well, I mean, I mean, the Switch itself definitely felt digital to me.
Right. I think it's all digital.
Yeah, that would make sense. I don't remember checking the Pro Controller specifically, but it would be weird if there were a disconnect there. So.
Right, and I do want to point out the version of this question we got from Tamales Yatole, who asks, what would that imply for a still unconfirmed GameCube Virtual Console? And that's a very good question.
I think it implies that the GameCube adapter is going to work still.
Yeah, no, I agree. Absolutely. It is surprising, though, that the standard Switch controller options wouldn't be fully compatible with the GameCube Virtual Console, that you would have to have a GameCube adapter.
Seemingly, yeah. I mean, they felt digital. We can't 100% confirm that, but they did feel digital to us, so...
Yeah, exactly.
At That One Gamer asks, how comfortable are the Joy-Con and the Joy-Con grip? Are long play sessions viable, or is a Pro Controller the way to go? So I'll go and take this one first.
Sure.
Because the first demo I actually played was Zelda Breath of the Wild using a Joy-Con controller, and that was probably one of the longest demos they have, being, I think, 20 minutes or so, just like the E3 version.
Right.
And I had almost no issues with it. That's when I first noticed the travel distance on the control stick, but, ignoring that, it felt fine to me. Now, again, these are preliminary impressions. This could change later on, but I had no issues playing Zelda with the Joy-Con grip. I had no issues using the motion controls with it. It felt fine to me, and I think that's a fine way to play. So, yeah, no issues.
I completely agree. Like, I could see myself... Like, I originally, I was factoring in the Switch Pro Controller into the cost of whatever I buy at launch, but more and more, I'm thinking I might not need to buy a Switch Pro Controller until later, because I could see myself playing through all of the Breath of the Wild on the Joy-Con grip.
It's
like,
totally
it was really
possible.
Comfortable. It's very light. It's not heavy. You almost forget it's there. I really like the Joy-Con grip, to be quite honest, so I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think we're agreed. At MattRyan02 asks, anything about the Pro Controller having Bluetooth?
Not that we've heard offhand, right? I don't think we've heard anything about that
I don't
offhand.
think we know one way or the other. I mean, I'd be surprised if they're not connecting via Bluetooth, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, that's the thing is I don't actually know how the Pro Controller is connecting already. Like, even the Wii U Pro Controller, I feel like it's connecting via Bluetooth. So this might be a very obvious answer in that, yes, the Wii U Pro Controller had it, so the Switch Pro Controller will have it too. But we're not quite sure how exactly they're already connected.
Yep. At DreamFollower7 asks, does Zelda make use of HD Rumble in any way on the Switch? Oh,
I wish I could remember.
I know. That kind of proves my point there, Ash. Not that big of a deal.
Well, yeah, but that's because I've also most of my time on Zelda has been spent playing it on.
Yeah,
YouTube,
no.
So
I mean, at demo events, there's so much going on. It's impossible to keep track of everything. I want to say I noticed it, but I really can't say for sure. So.
Yeah, to be quite honest, I only played Zelda for about 20 minutes, and it was the E3 demo, so I didn't get to do anything that I felt would necessitate HD Rumble. Like, I feel like the kind of thing HD Rumble would work really well for in Zelda is like riding a horse and feeling like the horse's, kind of specific nuanced movements, but I didn't get to ride a horse, so yeah, I can't answer that, but I really wish I could.
Oh, you didn't get to ride Andre around?
I know.
The horse Andre.
Oh, I know, yeah. Well, it's funny. I wish I had been playing because then, yeah. But it was really cool of that demo of the woman leading that demo to let me name the horse. I thought it was pretty cool.
Right, that was cool. But you didn't actually enter the name. You told her what to name it, right?
No. Okay. So yeah. So my only glimpse is funny. The only glimpse I got of the Switches of any Switch UI elements was the letters keypad that came up on screen to name the horse, like you would if you were playing a PS4 game. And you naming something in-game and a little on-screen keyboard comes up. That's really the only glimpse I got of the Switch's UI.
I guess real quick, just because I don't know if there will ever be another time to bring this up, but I think you have a short story about this, right? About that UI screen that came up. And
oh, I do. Yeah, I do. It was actually at the end of that horse demo. I think I had leaned down to disconnect my computer from their capture device, and I went back up, and I guess when you're on the pause screen, like a lot of adventure games, you can press L and R on the pause screen to go through different menus. And so I guess my demo person accidentally hit the L button, and that went over to your quest log. And for whatever reason, it was showing a quest description that seemed like it was from the end of the game, and I definitely saw things I was not supposed to. And so she saw that I saw, and by that time her boss had already come over. And so they looked at me really nervously, And I'm like, I don't think I was supposed to see this, right? She's like, no, you weren't. Like, please don't go talk about it. And I'm like, oh, no, I won't. And I'm not going to. So sorry, guys, you're not getting any Zelda spoilers from us here today. But it was kind of a weird, like, oh, I definitely was not supposed to see that. So, but my lips are sealed. My lips are zipped. You're not getting it from me. So I don't want anyone to lose.
Nope.
It was definitely the kind of, like, someone could lose their job type situation. And that's bad mojo.
No spoilers here. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Official Zach110 asks, have you guys played with a Switch wheel? If so, is it comfortable? So I think I'm the only one here who has, because I know you don't particularly care about it. I think, Ash. I mean, I think it was offered to you. You're like, no, screw that.
Well, I figured because I figured it'd be good for me to try it without it since you were trying it.
And it worked out that way. You know, as one who actually really liked the Wii wheel on Mario Kart Wii, but I think this one felt fine. I will say, like, the size makes it feel a little bit goofier than it did even on the Wii. I mean, I know it's the entire idea of using a wheel is kind of goofy, but it felt more like a little, like, toddler toy almost in this case, because it's a really tiny wheel. Otherwise, it felt fine. Like, it has it now has 2 triggers instead of just the one on the Wii's Wii wheel. You know, it had that enlarged B button basically. Now there's 2 of them. One for, you know, there's 2 shoulder buttons, so you can power slide and use items, as I recall. I think that's how they broke down. It felt fine. Like, maybe not quite as good as on Wii again. And I don't know if I'll honestly use it for Mario Kart 8, just because I always use the standard controls anyway with Mario Kart 8. But yeah, I mean, if you really want to use a wheel, this should be a fun way of doing it.
Yeah.
All right. Smash Highlights asks, how the touchscreen compare to Wii U to the Wii U/tablets? There's no sign of a stylus, right? So we kind of already addressed that, but yeah, there's no sign of a stylus as far as I can tell. I don't think there's any sign of it at all.
Well, yeah, because it's the kind of touchscreen that will not work with the stylus. It's capacitive. So
I mean, it won't work with a standard stylus.
Or a standard stylus, I should say.
There are, you know, the iPad has its own stylus, and there are other styluses made for capacitive touchscreens.
Like, they say it's the ones with the soft ends,
exactly.
not the hard ends. Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if those do end up coming to the Switch at some point, but I don't see that being a big focus. I mean, I could even see Nintendo bundling in at one point, like, hey, here's Mario Paint Switch. Not a confirmation, by the way, I'm just making that up. That comes with a stylus or something, so.
Right.
Alright, Joseph Rudkin asks, with all the tech shoved into them, are the Joy-Cons heavy?
No, and that's one of the most impressive things about them. They're so light, you almost forget they're there. They're like paperweights, and they got all this cool tech in them, but you barely feel them. I cannot stress how much I like the Joy-Cons just in general. I think they're really interesting and really impressive from an engineering standpoint. Like, I remember when I was playing Mario Kart 8, held sideways like a Wii remote, I'm like, there are these 2 little shoulder buttons here on the top of the Joy-Con that you wouldn't even know were there unless you deattach the Joy-Cons from the Switch, but they're there so you can have every function that you would normally have on a regular hand, like horizontal, or most of the functions that you would have on a regular horizontally held controller. And I just want to say that I'm really impressed with the engineering that went into the Joy-Cons.
Yeah, they're super light, and again, as you said, it's impressive with how much is packed into them. I will say, I'm going to elaborate a little bit on something I touched on in our discussion of our impressions where I was super tired. I think that lightness might be why it felt a little bit odd to me compared to the Switch itself. Because, or the Switch, you know, screen itself. Because those are super light, but then they're supporting that, you know, that heavy base, that heavy screen, or relatively heavy screen, I should say. So that might be why it felt a little bit odd to me. Like, there's a contrast in these really light ends supporting that heavy screen. But, you know, it's not a big deal, so, or at least I don't think it is.
Yeah, like, it's weird because as light as they are, at least to me, as light as they are, when you attach them to the Switch itself, I never felt like they were, like, there's no give between the Joy-Cons and the Switch screen. Like, there's no shakiness, there's no, like, you can see the lines, of course, where you deattach them and reattach them, but I never felt like the Joy-Cons ever moved independently of the Switch console itself. When they're in, they're very secure, and they feel like they're part of the unit itself.
Real quick, did someone ask about connecting Joy-Cons specifically, Ash, do you remember, or?
I feel like someone did later on, but I can't remember specifically.
Okay, well, hopefully they do, but
we'll come back to that as well. Yeah.
All right, Engineer JFZ asks, how is undocking and docking the Switch during a game? Just pressing A gets rid of the menu, right?
Yeah, so typically you have to confirm the controller you're going to use by pressing L and R. I think it's L and R, and then, yeah, just pressing A gets rid of the menu. It's no fuss. It's not complicated or annoying in any way. Like, that's one of the things I was most impressed by. Like, there is kind of like that magical, whoa, that's cool moment when you first the first time you dock or undock the Switch from the TV, it's instantaneous. Like, there was one instance where it was not instantaneous, but I came to find out that it was because of the TV, not the Switch. So there were some input issues happening on the TV. But
that's a good point, because once you disconnect the Switch, like, the input just dies on the TV. Like, it doesn't know that there's anything connected to it, because there isn't, except for the HDMI
there isn't.
cable. Right.
Yeah.
So basically, as long as your TV, I mean, it's going to depend on your TV with how long the signal takes to come back, because a lot of TVs take a few seconds for it to recognize an HDMI signal.
Right, exactly. But in terms of the Switch itself, it's instantaneous. Like, as soon as you disconnect it from the dock, it's on the screen. As soon as you put it in the dock, it's on your TV screen. Like, it's a very cool mechanic.
Now, what games did you try that with?
I tried that really with only, I mean, that could be a software. I don't know if that's happening at the hardware or the software level, but I tried it with Zelda, and I tried it with Street Fighter randomly.
Now my question is, was there a pause screen on Street Fighter 2, or was it only Zelda? Like, we had to press A to resume?
No, I believe there was a pause screen on Zelda. Like, I got the sense that it's going to be done at the
game level.
Either it's going to be well, I got the sense that either it's done at the hardware level, or that even if it's done at the software level, Nintendo's going to mandate that the game interrupts itself in some way. And everything that I saw led me to believe that it's going to be like if your controller runs out of a battery. Like, you know how most games on Wii U, if your controller dies, it pauses automatically before you can restart with a new controller. And in every case of connecting and disconnecting the Switch from the dock, that's what happened, regardless of game.
At Waylon1 asks, how did it feel controlling the Inklings of Splatoon 2? Just as fluent as the first? And do the MC...
I think motion controls. I think MC,
yeah. And do the motion controls still help gameplay?
They felt fine. Like again, I've touched on this. Controlling Splatoon 2 with the Switch Pro controller was awesome. Just as fluent as the first. And the motion controls, there's been some confusion here that I've seen on Twitter, and I want to make clear that the Switch Pro controller does have motion controls, and those motion controls work just as well as in the Wii U gamepad. Like, it's actually kind of cool holding the smaller Switch Pro controller and moving it around and realizing, wow, this gyroscope works just as well as the much bigger Wii U gamepad did back on the Wii U. Mm-hmm. And like, tilting the controller to move the camera in Splatoon 2 works perfectly. However, if you didn't like the motion controls in Splatoon 1, you're still going to want to turn them off here. Like, it's not like it's going to suddenly make you a fan.
Alright, I think we might have to start speeding up our answers a little bit here, because we got a lot more to get through before we get to the...
Oh, you know what? Actually, I'll touch on what I was going to say later then, but on a different question.
Okay, sounds good. At Shadow Fuzzy asks, do you think ARMS has the potential to be a success like Splatoon? Do you think button controls add longevity? Thank you. Add longevity to it. Oh my god, that was wrong.
Well, yes. I mean, it's really hard to say. I don't, there's definitely a lot more depth in ARMS than I think either of us were expecting, Andre, but I think it's way too early to see if it's going to have so much depth that it becomes like this crazy competitive fighting game in the professional scene. I don't know if I see that happening, even with the traditional button controls, but a fighting game doesn't need to be competitive to be, like, on that level to be fun. There's definitely more depth here than I think you would expect just by watching the trailers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there seems to be a decent amount of depth there, but we're not quite sure how long that's going to hold up for. So we'll see. It seems like there's a lot more to know about that game than what we currently do. At Top Tier Talo asks, do you think ARMS could be a competitive fighting game and a strong new IP? It seems to do what Splatoon did for its genre.
Right. So that's very obviously very related to the previous question, and I think there's a possibility, yes, that we could see be seeing Ribbon Girl and Ninjara come up in other stuff. This could be a big new IP, but again, we're not really going to know, like Splatoon, until it comes out. Is it going to be the smash hit out of the gate that Splatoon was? I don't know. It might not have that instant appeal that Splatoon did, but I don't think we should write it off either. I don't know if I see it being as big a deal as Splatoon, but I don't necessarily see it being nothing either.
I think it's going to need a better name to be as big as Splatoon.
Yeah, ARMS isn't it's not catchy or just it's clever like Splatoon.
Yeah. At Johnny R2002 asks, do you think the kickstand is going to be used a lot, or are Joy-Cons being attached better?
I think it's really just going to depend on how you like playing and where you are. I mean, if you don't have a lot of space to hold your Switch the way you normally would, then you're probably going to want to deattach the Joy-Cons and use tabletop mode. I think it's less about which is better and more about it's awesome that you can do either one. Mm-hmm. And I think that, they both work really well, and it's really just going to be down to how much space you have to hold the Switch,
Right. Yeah, I think I agree with all that. Actually, real quick, to elaborate, you tried the airplane thing again, where they specifically had it set up for the tabletop mode. How was the angle on that for you? Like, because you can't really adjust the Switch's angle with this.
That's true, and it was fine. It was very much it was very horizontally emphasized. So it's closer to being flat on the table than it is actually stood up at a 45-degree angle. I would say it's more like maybe a 75-degree angle, 70, so it's definitely closer to being flat, but I was okay with it. Okay. Although I can see there being, problems, or not problems, but I can see there being times where you're like, oh man, I wish I could prop up the kickstand a little more to, change my viewing angle, but it worked fine for me.
Okay. At Maxine Vaccine asks, how many modes of play did you try, controller-wise? Which was the most comfortable? Find me a Smash 3DS.
So this is kind of related to the last question. We basically tried every configuration you can think of. The Switch console itself, the Joy-Cons and the Joy-Con grip, the Joy-Cons on tabletop mode, free roaming, and then the Joy-Con sideways, and everything felt great. I want to emphasize that there was really no orientation of the controller that I thought was uncomfortable, except for one specific point, and that was when I was playing Splatoon 2 with you, Andre, and I noticed that playing with just the Switch console by itself with the Joy-Cons attached, at least for Splatoon 2, I noticed that the placement of the right stick, I didn't like it at all. No. I found myself having to kind of knuckle the control stick and instead of actually touch it with my thumb, and that didn't feel good at all. But in every other configuration, I had no problem with the placement. I think it just has to do with the grip you have on the system.
I would actually say there is with ARMS actually. You had to use a control stick to manipulate the menu, and because
that's a good point.
You're holding the Joy-Cons in a very weird way, like a way that I think it will only ever be used in ARMS, basically. Yeah, that was a little bit weird. Not a huge deal, but something to keep in mind. Splatoon, I totally agree on. If you're holding the entire system with the Joy-Cons, makes it tricky to reach our right control stick. So
it is, yeah. So that would be like the only real control issue I have, and that's going to be from game to game.
I will say, as far as being most comfortable, when I was playing 1-2 Switch using the Joy-Con as well as what's a wrist strap accessory called? The little grip.
Oh, I don't remember.
Yeah, there's a grip thing that goes on it. That felt pretty comfortable. I thought that felt pretty good. So
okay,
it makes the buttons easier to hit, I believe, the shoulder ones. All right, at Cortez the Gamer 7 asks, how did the Joy-Con controllers feel? I guess we just kind of covered that, right? So
yeah, I mean we kind of covered that in other questions. Yeah, they're very, very comfortable in every configuration, other than some games where the right analog stick can be a little iffy.
Okay, at Hack Amir asks, can you use a Wii U Pro Controller?
We don't know for sure, but I'm willing to basically guarantee no, because otherwise, how are they going to sell you that $70 Switch Pro controller?
Right?
So, as cool as that would be, I'm almost sure that there's not going to be Wii U Pro controller compatibility.
Another thing to consider is that the Switch Pro controller does have motion controls built in.
It does. It has HD rumble. It has the gyroscope. So it has more functionality than the Wii U Pro controller.
Yeah. At CCP 007 asks, is it worth spending $100 at launch for the Pro Controller to play Breath of the Wild, or do the Joy-Cons suffice? Wait, is it that much? How much is a Pro Controller?
Well, it might be in other territories. I've been hearing from other people on Twitter, in Australia, the Switch is really expensive. Yeah. It's crazy.
I think everything's expensive there.
Exactly. So yeah, it could be $100 in some territories. But in general, as I touched on this earlier, I was going to buy a Switch Pro Controller at launch. I don't think I will anymore, because Zelda felt amazing with the Joy-Con grip. I had no problems with it, and I could see myself playing through the entire game with the Joy-Con grip.
At Gregster 1998 asks, how did the shoulder buttons of the Joy-Cons feel when disconnected from the Switch?
They felt fine to me. I think I specifically remember having a little trouble finding the front shoulder buttons, as in regular L and R, not ZL and ZR. I remember I guess they're so flush to the Joy-Cons themselves, and I'm like, oh, where are they? And then once I figured it out, it was fine. Mm-hmm. But I guess there was a little kind of okay, I didn't know exactly where they were at first.
Okay. At SimplyMax9237 asks, which control set do you prefer, minus the Pro Controller?
Let's see. I'm trying to think. I mean, it really, as I've said, it's from game to game. And I think that you're going to find that over and over again, people are going to have their own preferred control schemes for various games. But I guess, on the whole, I really like the Joy-Con grip.
At Shellhon asks, when holding one Joy-Con in each hand, does it fit nicely, or does it feel like it'll easily slip out of your hands?
fits perfectly nicely. I never felt like I was going to drop the Joy-Con even once.
So, actually related to that, there is one problem I noticed, and
Okay.
I was trying to look up the name here of that wrist strap thing. Here we go, found it. Okay, I guess it's just a Joy-Con strap. So that thing that attaches to it. So when I was playing Switch 1-2 Switch, with just a Joy-Con, it had that wrist strap grip thing on it, and that kept coming off like multiple times.
You're right, that did come off my wrist. I remember when I was playing ARMS, I got really into it, and the wrist strap came off.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean the wrist strap. I meant the actual connector, the plastic piece that fits over the Joy-Con.
Really?
That kept coming off.
Okay.
So that happened for me, and it happened for a few other people as well. I don't know if that's something you have to get used to, maybe we're just not used to it, but that did happen a few times, and maybe it's unique to 1-2 Switch, which is how you're moving the controller in that case.
Right.
Again, don't know if that's a big deal, but that was worth mentioning.
Okay.
At Temple of Games asks, was there a sense of better third-party support for the Switch down the road by the Nintendo reps?
No, and I thought this is a good question to answer, just to make clear that the Nintendo reps are there specifically to demo the games. They're there to demo. They don't know anything. They don't really. They don't. I don't mean that. They don't know anything about unannounced things. Is what they're not. They don't have any secrets that we didn't hear from the conference. So in general, no, we didn't find out anything from the reps that they're not allowed to talk about.
Yep. At Broken Melon asks, the Switch while in portable mode looks fairly small. Is it comfortable to hold? Does the screen seem too small?
Yes, it's comfortable to hold, and no, the screen is not too small. I love the screen. I want to drive that point home. I think the screen's bright, crisp. Every game I saw on the screen looked great. Yep. So I'm fine with the form factor and the size of the Switch's screen.
Okay. At Nintendo Gaming asks, does the Switch easily go into and out of the dock? Not too much fidgeting needed. I think that might be something, or no, I guess that is a unique question.
It's kind of specific, yeah. And then, yeah, I mean, there were a few related questions, but yeah, it's a very seamless, quick transition. Like, no fidgeting. The Switch goes right into the dock. You pull it right out. There's really no fidgeting or muss or fuss necessary.
Yep. Since I'm not sure if it's going to come up or not, it was something I was going to bring up earlier. The only thing is when connecting and disconnecting the Joy-Cons from the Switch itself. Yes. It is pretty particular in how you slide them down. I'm sure it's purely a learning curve, but it wasn't quite as easy, or it's not like it looks completely seamless in the reveal trailer. Not quite as easy in real life, especially like when you disconnect them. Like you have to hold down a little button on whether it's on the Joy-Con grip or on the Switch itself, and so you definitely have to use like two hands for each side of the each side for each of the Joy-Cons. So you can't at least I couldn't find an easy way to take out both at the exact same time, like in the reveal trailer, I think. Or I think they may have shown it that way. I can't quite remember, but
yeah, I mean, I think it's just they're very once you know where the little lever is to push in to get the Joy-Cons out, it's very easy to do. But there's a bit of a learning curve involved in terms of how you're going to hold the system when you're doing it. But really, it's not hard to do.
Yep. At One Punch Maz asks, how did you try out the regular controls and ARMS? How did the game play with them compared to playing with motion controls?
So, no, I just want to make very clear, we were only allowed to play ARMS with motion controls. We didn't get to try the regular button controls.
Yeah. I thought that, I don't know if someone else asks later, but the motion controls work great in that game.
They really were, yeah.
I was surprised by how effective they were. Like, I didn't have any memory, or like, it didn't bring back any flashbacks of early Wii games that had trouble detecting where you were, when you were using motion controls. So, it seemed to work great.
Yeah.
At Nate W3 asks, do you think it's dumb you have to pay for the network after spending $300 on the system?
It will be dumb if the online is no better than on the Wii U or 3DS. Otherwise, no. You know what? Servers cost money to maintain. That's fair. I think it's fair that Nintendo charges for their online service if the online service is a lot better than on Wii U's. But if we're paying however much a month or year for this online service and Smash Switch comes out and there's all sorts of input lag and stuttering, no, that's unacceptable. So really, it's too soon to say. It just depends on if that cost also means we're getting a better online service.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. At Nintendo Boy 404 asks, do you find yourself touching the release button while in handheld mode? Any fear of pressing them and dropping the Switch?
Never. I never had that. Like the levers that you have to depress to get the Joy-Cons out, they're like situated toward the back of the system and like not anywhere near where your fingers would go from what I remember. So I never had any fear that I was going to drop it, or I don't think my fingers even ever brushed up against the disconnect things
Not
while
even
I was
close.
playing a game.
Yeah,
Not even
it's
close.
not-
Like, it's not going to be a problem.
I mean, like I mentioned, I kind of had trouble finding them initially when I was trying to disconnect the Joy-Cons from the grip or the Switch.
Exactly.
So it's not a concern. Yeah, I don't think there's any fear of that. Plus, the way you slide them down, even if you were to accidentally hit them, you'd have to hold it upside down for it to slip out. So
yeah.
yeah. At Plasmatize asks, could the Switch screen with or without Joy-Cons fit in the front pocket? How about a back pocket or jacket pocket?
Not even close. You're going to need to get a carrying case for this thing. Like, if you plan on taking it with you a lot, you know, that screen's beautiful, but it's unprotected. You're not going to want to just throw it in your purse or your bag unprotected. Like, I would venture to say that anyone who wants to take this out with them a lot is going to need a carrying case because it does not fit in a pocket. It's not like a 3DS where you can fit it in your pocket. It's bigger, so you're going to need a specific case for it.
Now, they did ask with or without Joy-Cons. Are you addressing both of those?
Oh, that's true. I'm trying to think. Without Joy-Cons...
Because with Joy-Cons, no way. Without,
yeah, with Joy-Cons, not even close.
Without, yeah. I didn't test it, but I think it might be possible because I used to have a Nexus 7, and I could actually pretty easily fit that into my front jeans pocket, which is impressive. But that wasn't, a super small device, but small enough I could fit into my pocket. So I'm thinking you might be able to with the Switch.
But then again, that begs the question: why would you want to? Because unless you were just packing
Joy-Cons, right?
Yeah, because you need the Joy-Cons.
I mean, well, you put two Joy-Cons in one pocket, the Switch screen in the other.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, if you're okay with taking up two pockets with your then I guess that would work. But yeah, but even without the Joy-Cons, I feel like just the screen portion, I feel like it would be a tight fit for most pockets.
Yep. At Mubaka asks, is there a way to charge the system when in kickstand mode?
I think so. I don't know why there wouldn't be a way to charge the system when you're in any mode, because really, as long as you're next to a source of power and you have your AC adapter, it doesn't matter, which mode you're in, right?
Well,
I think so.
I think they're specifically asking because it's resting on the front of the system, right? So does that interfere with the charging cable able to get up and...
Oh, that's a good... I don't know. I don't
know either. I want to say that I think there may be a gap under there for the power cord to wrap underneath, so it could rest on it, but I don't take that as anything close to a guarantee, so I don't know for sure about that. So,
but I also feel like it would be a very strange engineering failure for them to have this cool tabletop mode, but not let you charge the Switch while you're playing it. So if I had to guess, I'm going to say that yes, you can play in tabletop mode and charge the Switch at the same time.
We do know how much Nintendo loves to ape Apple at times, and Apple
had
a
true.
stupid-ass mouse that you couldn't charge while using.
That is a good point. So yeah, we don't know for sure, but I'm going to guess that you probably can charge it.
I'm going to guess so too, but we don't know for sure.
Yeah.
At randomfan1234 asks, how do the Joy-Cons feel in the grip? Is the R stick... I guess we kind of touched on this already. Is the right stick directly below the face buttons uncomfortable? How's the split D-pad? Yeah, we kind of answered all of that, so...
Yeah.
Alright. Finally, this is our final question for part 1. At SFGFan63 asks, what is your favorite thing about the Switch and why?
I mean, that's such a big question.
It is a big question.
I think my favorite thing about the Switch is how much it's not just a proof of concept. Like, from an engineering standpoint, this thing impresses the hell out of me. All the different configurations, all the different things you can do with the Joy-Cons, the different ways you can play the Switch. Like, this is not like a gimmick that is hard to communicate like the Wii U. Like, the Wii U is like, oh, there's a screen in the GamePad. Okay, how is that cool? Well, we're not even sure how that's cool. That's not the case with the Switch. Like the central gimmick and the central cool thing that sets the Switch apart from the competition is easy to see. It's recognizable. It works really well. I mean, I am super excited about how I'm going to use the Switch in terms of, like, even flying back from the Switch event in New York. Every time I looked at my tray table, I'm like, man, I really want to Switch so I can, like, be playing it in tabletop mode. Like, I think my favorite part of it is how it's not just, like, cool engineering stuff, like, for gimmick's sake. Like, there are so many different ways and cool configurations you can play your Switch in, and it really does stand to change the way you think of playing console games, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you basically took the words right out of my mouth. I agree with all that. Like, I'm just really eager to see how exactly it fits into my life with the unique switching mechanic. Just because I've talked about before how I'm not that big of a handheld gamer anymore. I much prefer playing games on the TV. But that's also because, I mean, a lot of the games I want to play, or just end up being on the Wii U anyway. But if I did play a handheld game, it would be at home. But we've never had a situation quite like this where you can play the same games, at home or on the go. So that might change things up for me, and yeah, we'll see. So yeah, I mean, what it does well. Now the question is, is there a market for that? And we'll find out.
Well,
So.
and that's what I was going to say. Is as cool as the Switch is, and as well as it works in terms of what it tries to do differently, it's awesome. None of that's going to matter if we're looking at a very Wii U-like schedule with these touch-and-go releases with, every few months we get a big, cool game from Nintendo, and then that's it. So really, as cool as it is, it really still comes down to the games to make it worth your while,
If you want to talk about touch-and-go releases, the Nintendo DS definitely had that one in the bag.
Yoshi Touch and Go, I know. I knew exactly what you were going to say when I said that. But I guess the thing I would end on is that the Switch is definitely that kind of cool thing that you see someone else using, and you're like, whoa, because when you see someone playing Mario Kart 8, a game that looks that good, and they're just on a plane or they're whatever, and it's portable, that seems to me to be the kind of thing where you go like, whoa, what is that? Where'd you get that? Tell me about this. Oh, I kind of want to get one. Like that, it has that kind of gee whiz, like, whoa, that's really cool factor to it.
Yep, totally agreed. All right, so that wraps up for part 1 of our Switch Q&A. We'll be back with part 2 pretty soon, where I think we'll have some more game-specific questions, right, Ash? You probably know them better than I do. Are there?
I believe so. Well, really, to be honest, I just took them in order of the order they were asked, so that the people who asked first came first, and the people who asked later came later.
So it seems a lot of people care more about the Switch itself than the game. So
yeah, so I think it's mostly about I would say the majority of the questions are about the hardware itself, and specifically the controllers and the different ways you can control the Switch.
All right, so yeah, we'll be back with all that fairly soon. And of course, stay tuned to Game of Stone for lots more on the Switch and everything else as well. Catch you guys later. Bye.